We're at the end of petition season, just a few weeks left to get on the ballot, get the signatures you need, and we're hearing it time and time again from candidates that they're struggling right now to get the signatures they need to make sure they make it on the ballot. So I'm here with Matt Duray. We're going to talk about what you can do to make sure you get the signatures you need to get on the ballot as a candidate. First things first, before we even talk about signatures, we got to talk about the petition itself. And I say this because in the last couple of weeks, we've had 3 different candidates send us their petitions to look at, or we just happened to get our hands on it. And we said, hey, you know, there's a big problem here, and if you file with this, you could get knocked off the ballot. And they freaked out and ended up having to restart. So first things first, I know that there's only a month left or less than a month left, but still make sure your petition is rock solid. Make sure somebody who's a professional looks at it. I know it would stink to have to restart, but it's not as bad as getting knocked off the ballot and wasting all this time and energy. So make sure your petition is solid.
Totally. We all know the old saying that you measure twice and cut once. Well, I would say for petitions, measure 5 times. Look at the top of it, look at it again, sleep on it, and then look at it again another time. Because if you mess that up, you can get 1,000 signatures and they'd all be null and void if you mess up the top. So make sure that it's correct.
Yeah, and nowadays ballot access by the courts has been opened up tremendously in Illinois. Very few things are fatal flaws anymore, but one of those things that is a fatal flaw is a major error in the formation of the petition itself, let alone the overall paperwork. That still remains a fatal flaw. So it's the thing you don't want to take lightly. Make sure your petition is good. Even now, make sure you've got people who you trust, who have done this before. You can even send it to us. We're happy to look at it free of charge, but just make sure your petition is rock solid. Okay, now you're going out and getting signatures. I'm sure by now, after weeks or maybe even months of passing, you've got a pretty good idea of how to do it. But Matt and our team have passed and collected hundreds of pages, if not thousands of pages of signatures for candidates and clients. So I wanted to ask him some of his thoughts, his tips and tricks on ways that you can go get petition signatures to maximize not only the quantity, but also the quality. So what are some of those tips?
Definitely. So you want to have a mix. You're going to have some signatures that you want to make sure everyone's registered to vote, everyone's with the political party of whatever you're running with, and then you also want some quantity ones where maybe some of them are invalid, but that's okay because we'll go look at them later. So you want that mix so you can get to your number. We usually say that whatever your minimum is, you want 2 to 3 times that. So then that way, if someone's looking at it and they want to challenge it, they won't even bother because you have so many that you'll survive any petition challenge. Yeah,
and I like that quantity and quality thing, because what I'll do when I'm putting together packets for my candidates is I'll lead with the quality ones. The first pages will always be those sexier ones, the rock solid door-to-door ones, because when someone's looking at it, think about the mind of your objector, or even a judge or someone who's reviewing it if you do get objected to. You think about their mindset. If the first page, second page, third page, fourth page, fifth page, they're all gorgeous, every signature is good, it's door-to-door, that's going to create a mindset. And too much of this process when it comes to objections is the mindset. It's not the black and white. It's if the hearing officer feels like your signatures are going to be good, they're going to rule for you rather than against you in those 50-50 situations, which a lot of them are 50-50 situations. So a lot of this is just the impression that you give. So lead with those really good door-to-door pages in your packet, and then towards the end, the second half of it or the second 2/3, that's your quantity. That's the ones you go get where, yeah, 5 out of 15 might be bad, 3 out of 15 might be bad, but it's okay because you just need pages and pages to fill out your packet. So that's totally something that we do. Where would you go to get the high quality signatures, and where would you go to get the more quantity version?
Definitely. For the higher quality signatures, make sure you have good data. That could either be through the political party that you're running with. We definitely have some great data that you could utilize, and that's in the form of like a walk app or walk sheets. And that means if you're going door to door, you're talking to people, you can confirm that the person who's signing your sheet is actually a registered voter at the address that they put down. That's where we would say a lot of the quality signatures come from. Also, your family and friends that you know live in the district, you know that they're voters, and hopefully they're going to vote for you. For the quantity ones, you can really go anywhere as long as it's in the district or mostly in the district. This could be political events, community events. It could be train stations are a great way to get them. A lot of times people don't want to wake up and go to the train station from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., but there's hundreds of people waiting for the train before work who have nothing better to do than to sign your petition. And one of the things that we always say is it's better to err on the side of getting the signature and then making sure it's valid later than missing out on an opportunity to get a signature and you find out later that they were a perfectly good voter that you missed out on.
Yeah, and not only is it that they could be actually a good voter and you might have missed, but even more than that, make your objector have to do that work. The burden of proof if they object against you is on them, not on you. And so if they want to object to a signature, they have to prove that person is not registered. That takes time. So I'm not saying go get a bunch of bad signatures, but I am saying, you know what, let them, unless you have a maximum where you have to strike, which we'll talk about that in a future video, unless you have a maximum where you've got to get below that maximum, you've got to strike your own signatures, why not make your opponent have to go through all that time and effort and pay an attorney to go through and actually strike those signatures for you? So as Matt said, just take the signature. Even if you strike it or they strike it later, it's better to get the signature than it is to just skip it. Let's stay on this for a second, the places you can go to get that quantity of signatures, because here in the final month, couple weeks of petition gathering processes, this is when people are getting a little bit struggly, a little bit desperate to find those final signatures. So what are ideas on places that they could go? You mentioned train stations. I know those are great. A lot of these suburban train stations even get there before 6, because there's usually a train around 6. You want to capture that one, so get there at like 5:40. But other than train stations, what are other places you've seen where groups of people congregate that you can get signatures?
Yes, farmers markets, community events, different town halls. We would usually recommend that the candidate keep a calendar and they just look at, across a few months, you could look on Facebook or on community sites of what are different community events that are going on, and you just show up for an hour and you pass around a petition and you can get 100, 150. And if you can't go, then have one of your friends go or one of your circulators go. And I know we'll get into how to find circulators later, but just make sure that there's always a presence, because you never know where there'd be good signatures.
Yeah, let's talk about what some of those community events could be, because I remember back in the day when I had to get signatures. Thankfully, I've got people like Matt to do that for me now. But back in the day when I had to go out and get signatures, I remember some of those events, like local high school football games, were awesome. There's so many people there, and a lot of them are parents, some of them who are really into it, some of them who aren't. So actually they're like, sure, come on by. I went to one where they actually just passed it down like every row for me, and I just stood there and made sure I was watching, so it was legal. But I got like 250 signatures in one couple hours span. It was amazing, all by myself. So football games, if there are still baseball, but I think baseball's basically done at this point. But those community sporting events are huge. You get a lot of people to those. What else? What are some other ideas?
Yeah, if there's an Oktoberfest or a local band playing, people will sign anything if they had a couple beers in them, and you could just go around. Also parades, Memorial Day parade, or I guess that's not
but there's Veterans Day coming up.
Veterans Day, different October days, community events. I've had so much fun just running up and down a parade. Can you sign this? Yes. Can you sign this? Yes. Can you sign this?
Yeah.
People are so happy if they're in a community group, a community atmosphere where there's people that they know share the similar values and they have a sense of community that's shared. They're more likely to sign than if you just go up to them on the side of the road.
Well, and it's also already a social event, so they're already in that social frame of mind. So to your point, it's a great way to do it. It's an easier thing, and they tend to be more receptive to it. I've seen a lot of success standing in front of grocery stores. Now, you might get kicked out at a certain point. I've got someone who swears by libraries. She gets tons of signatures in front of libraries. I've not had as much luck in front of libraries. I've had a lot of luck in front of grocery stores. Other people will tell you they always get kicked out in front of grocery stores. So it really just varies, but don't be afraid to be kicked out. There's a sort of a rule of thumb of how to handle it. You're not going to be in legal trouble for it, but if you're there for an hour or two before they finally decide to kick you out, that's a lot of signatures you can get. And keep in mind, as we approach Thanksgiving, more and more people are going to be going to those grocery stores. I've had plenty of candidates over the years where they sign us to get their signatures and get them on the ballot in like a week or two leading up to Thanksgiving, and we get most of our signatures in front of grocery stores in those couple days and weeks as people are going to get the food for Thanksgiving. So it's a great place to go. Again, if they ask you to leave, you got to leave. Now, there are some people, they won't call police until they've asked you 2 or 3 times. So if you really want to risk it, you can wait 2 or 3 times, and then when they really seem serious, then finally leave. But it does give you plenty of time to get those signatures as they go. So another great place. What else?
And don't go inside the grocery store or the library. Stay outside. They usually have a minimum amount of feet that you have to be. And sometimes I'll be outside of a library and the security guard will come out and say, hey, can you take a few steps back just so you're within a certain distance? We say, okay, yeah, we're always very respectful. And they say, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. So make sure you're following the rules. And if they ask you to leave, you should leave, even if you legally have a right to be there. Just, you want to be in good taste with people because you are running for office.
Yeah.
Another thing, if you're a part of any groups or clubs, if you're Exchange Club, Rotary Club, Boy Scouts, even a member of your church, you could ask the people who are leaders there and say, hey, you guys know me, you love me, can I just pass around a petition at the next meeting? I wouldn't be going to maybe churches that you're not a member of and walking around inside asking people to sign, but if the people know you in that space and you're well known and respected in that area, they should have no problem being willing to sign for you.
And this is a good transition into Circulator. So as a soft fold into this next issue. Another way to get signatures at those places, like the chamber meetings, the JC meetings, the Lions Club, even churches, is if you have somebody who is involved in those organizations and really well known to go with you or to sort of sponsor you and be part of it. Because if you just go to one of their meetings, if you are involved even still, you're not going to get a lot of support. But if you have someone who's a member of the board, or if it's a church and they're one of the pastors or a leader or a well-known Sunday school teacher or something, that's going to really maximize the number of signatures you can get. And so we'll talk next about how do you go get circulators. But I think just in terms of getting signatures, if you can find somebody who's involved in that local group, or go to a senior home, and if there's someone who is there, or a relative of somebody who's there who's going to go with you, we've seen a lot of success getting signatures at senior homes. It's just a matter of getting in, so you need somebody who has that in, who either lives there or is related to someone who lives there. So think about who's that. It's like the Kevin Bacon thing, right? The 6 degrees of separation. Who do you know that knows somebody that can get you into that room? Because when it comes to getting signatures for petitions, it's about finding places where there are a group of people at the same time. That's what you're looking for. So if someone can get you in that room, now you're going to get the quantity. Anything else on that before we move straight into circulators?
You covered it.
All right, so circulators. How do you get circulators? Because you can't just do this on your own. It depends on the race you're running for. If you're running for governor or president, you can get some circulators. But if you're running for judge or maybe state rep or a county office, it might be a little harder. But you need help to get this done. So, Matt, how will a candidate get themselves circulators to support them and assist them in this process?
Definitely. Well, first, you want to start out with yourself. If you're not even out there getting signatures, then why would other people want to get out there and support you? So it starts inward and it slowly moves outward. So you start with yourself. You want to make sure you're out there. Then you want to talk to family, friends, and people that are close to you. They might owe you a favor. They might be neighbors. They might want to be people who they don't know how to get involved politically, but they hear that you're running for office, so here's a great way for them to get involved. Start with those people that are closest to you, and then when people see the momentum building, they see that, oh, look, it's not just Collin out there getting signatures. This is pretending you're running for office, which I know you would never do. It's not just Collin, it'd be his wife and his friends and his family, and they see that organic momentum growing, then they're more likely to get on. Another thing would be really tap into your network of what organizations you're part of. If you're part of a church, ask some people in there to talk to their circles that they know that they could maybe get signatures for. If you're part of a Rotary Club, or if you know someone who's part of a Rotary Club and you're not, then that person who's a part of that club could go around and get signatures on your behalf, and you probably couldn't because you don't know those people. So start with that, slowly move outside, and then sometimes what people will do is they'll get paid circulators. They might have some high schoolers or college-age kids who they'll be paying, but make sure if you pay people for circulators, you want to start early because campaigns are always trying to find people, and the going rate always goes up when it gets closer to the filing deadline, so lock people in early.
Yeah, and we'll talk about paid in a second. I think just for volunteers to finish off that, I remember there being a candidate not that long ago here in this area who was really nervous about getting petition signatures, and we sort of pushed him to go find people. He's like, no one's going to pass for me, no one's going to pass for me. Like, no, he's a part of the local JCs, ask the JCs, will you guys do this? And it turns out he built up so many friendships, and people felt like they owed him because he had volunteered for so many years for the JCs, that he got 5 or 6 of them who went out and got him 3 sheets, 4 sheets, 5 sheets, and it got him halfway to his number. So you never know what those groups are that you've been a part of over the years, that you've built relationships with. They'll get you a sheet, they'll get you a couple sheets, and that helps you along the way. And most people aren't going to go out to events, they're going to go to their friends and family. So that's the good thing is, ask them, hey, when you see friends and family over the next month, will you just take a sheet and get signatures? You don't even have to fill it, just get me signatures on the sheet and bring it back, on whatever date. And people will do it. It's not a huge burden for them. Most aren't going to go out in the rain, they're not going to knock on doors, some will. But really, at first, you're just asking your friends and family to talk to the people they know. Go to work, go to wherever you go, and ask some people on your break, hey, will you sign this? Or a part of the organization, will you sign this for me? It is easier than it seems. And by the way, I just got to say this. If you can't ask people to get you petition signatures, then you also, I know from experience, are never going to ask them to give you money, which means you're not going to raise money, which means you're going to lose. So here's the thing. If you can't ask them to go get you petition signatures, you maybe should think about hanging it up now and not even running, because it's even harder to ask them for money, and if you're not going to do that, you ain't going to win. So if you're not willing to do this first step, asking people to circulate for you, that means you're not going to ask them to volunteer to knock on doors and make phone calls in March or November. That also means you're not going to ask them for money. It means you're basically probably a dud of a candidate, and you shouldn't waste anybody's time. I know that's harsh, but I just got to be honest.
Yes, and don't be afraid to rely on political organizations with the party that you're running with. That's what these organizations exist for. If it's a township organization that has precinct committeemen, these precinct committeemen are likely going to need to be out there getting signatures for themselves. So why not go walk with them, hit a few doors and say, hey, can you take the rest of this neighborhood and take my petition with? They'd be more than happy to. And this is a good way to get in the door with them. You can start to meet those people. And especially when they're geographic organizations, like if it's a township of a certain township, then those people are going to know the events in that area. They're going to know the influencers and people to talk to, and they're going to say, hey, make sure you go to this library because they're super friendly and they will get you, they won't kick you out, or they say, hey, don't go to this train station. There's super mean there and you won't get any signatures. Those people know the places better than you do, and that's how you can start to build a grassroots team and understand your district in the early stages of the campaign.
And Matt said something that was key, which was go with them. One of the best ways to get circulators to be comfortable doing this is to say, hey, I'll go with you. I'll do it with you. You do that the first time, and then hopefully they'll do it 2 or 3 or 4 more times without you after that. But go with them. Show them you're working hard. Show them you're in it with them. You help build that relationship. So I think of everything Matt said there, it was all good. But the key, I thought, really was do it with them. Build that relationship. All right, final thing as we close out this video is how do you track all this? Because it doesn't do you any good if you don't know where your petition pages are, who's got what signatures. So what's the best way you've seen to track all this to make sure that at the end of this you end up with all the signatures on your kitchen table?
Yes, the single most important thing is don't count the petition until it's actually in your hand. We've seen time and time again a candidate will say, I have 1,000 signatures, and we say, where are they? And they say, oh, well, Sally has 10 and Dave has 30. And then the candidate goes and says, hey, can I pick up the signatures? And they say, oh, I don't have them. Yep. So you don't count the signature until it's actually physically in your hand. And one of the ways that we track them and we recommend to candidates is just have an Excel spreadsheet. Have weekly goals of how many you need. If you need 1,000 signatures and you have a month, then that means you would need 250 in a week, and make sure that when you get those signatures in hand, you're checking it off. Okay, I got 15 signatures from Dave. I got 20 from Sally. They're in hand. And also know how many are out there. Know that you might not get all the ones that are out there, but if you ask someone, hey Dave, can you get me 50 signatures, then follow up with them. Know that in a couple weeks you say, I'm going to be picking these up on the 30th, and then on the 20th you say, hey, are we still good to pick those up on the 30th? Make sure you're following up with people. And the easiest way to track all this, whether it's the number, the names of the people, or the dates of when you need certain signatures by, is Excel. And we could show you the Excel spreadsheets as we've done, but it's really helpful just to plug it all in and see it for yourself.
See, I'm old school. I use Excel. Our team currently uses Google spreadsheets, so it could be shared by everybody. I would use Excel too, so I'm fully on board with that. But if you want to be hip and young, feel free to use another spreadsheet like Google Sheets. Either way, track it in that spreadsheet. Totally agree with that. And ultimately, remember that humans operate when there are deadlines. So create a deadline. Don't just say, hey, could you get me 5 sheets? Say, could you get me 5 sheets by this date? Because more than likely, they're going to get it done in the 7 to 10 days leading up to that deadline. Not now. Most people don't operate ahead of time. It just isn't how humans are wired. So give them a deadline, remind them as you get closer to the deadline, and then they're going to hustle and rush to do it towards the end, which is why most of the time they don't tend to reach the number that you ask them to reach. But if you don't give them that deadline, they're going to forget or find excuse after excuse to not do it. So make sure you create that sense of urgency. Any final thoughts on petitions before we close this out?
Yes, I was just going to say on the same token, while you do want to follow up with people and make sure that they're following through with what they said that they would do, don't be super mean about it, and be really compassionate, because they are doing you a favor. Make sure that you do take care of your volunteers. If they had to go drive to get signatures, give them a gas card at the end. Have a pizza party for your volunteers. And also, especially since they need to have the signatures notarized, make it as easy as possible for them. If that means you have to go pick up the sheets from them, if that means that you need to find a notary to go meet with them to get it notarized so they don't have to go to a bank or find their own. Just make it as easy as possible, because that takes a burden off of them, and they're more likely to get you more signatures. And also keep coming back to volunteer for you in the other stages of the campaign. So take care of your people.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll close with this. CORE is happy to help. We have a page that we've developed it's a one-pager with instructions. Half of it is instructions for circulators, half of it is instructions for signers. We'd be happy to provide that to you free of charge to use. Many, many candidates have used it. Lots of organizations have stolen it and used it for themselves and thrown their logo on it. What are you going to do? But happy to provide that to you as a resource. So reach out to us. If you want us to look at your petition to make sure it's good, your structure of it, again, happy to do that. Just reach out anytime. We want to make sure that our Republican candidates, I'll say the R word, our Republican candidates make it on the ballot. So whatever we can do to help make sure that happens. And then as Duray said, if you need paid circulators, we'll help you find some people. The problem is right now, the price is going up. It's ridiculous nowadays how expensive it is to get your paid petition circulators, because there's 30 people who are out there asking for it today. And next week it'll be 100 people that are asking for it. So let us know if you need that. I just can't promise that we're going to have people for you because it's really late in the cycle. But let us know how we can help. Matt's here to help. I'm here to help by asking Matt to do it. But we're here to help you out, so reach out. Thanks for watching. We'll come back next week or next month when we talk about how to pull your packet together and make sure you make it on the ballot.